I'm going to share today one of mine and my family's favorite board games that you probably never heard of, and you probably can't even get your hands on it today. It is a fairly old game. It's a game that's close to my heart and my family's heart. It's very nostalgic to us, and it's one of our favorite board games. Now, the game is called Cha-len-gah. Now, looking at the way it's spelt, and when I explain the mechanics of the game and how it works, I'm pretty sure it's actually meant to be pronounced Cha-len-gah, but my family has always called it Cha-len-gah. It's just how we see it. And personally, I think it sounds better than Cha-len-gah. Cha-len-gah just sounds better and more mystical, more mysterious, which the game has a lot of that. And the reason I wanted to, I've always wanted to make a video on this game because I think it's something special. And on the off chance, maybe someone out there actually owns it as well. If you look on Board Game Geek, though, if you look on BGG, you'll see that it doesn't really have many people who own the game at all. I believe it was only produced in Canada. The developer, Brian Anderson, I think it's Brian Anderson. Let's see. Yeah, created by Brian J. Anderson. The board was designed by Brian J. Anderson and Marla Penko, and the board was painted by Marla Penko. But I believe those are the only people that really worked on the game. And yeah, it was made it was copyright in 1995, so I think it was made in 1995, and I think this is the only thing that they have produced. Because I've tried researching information on Brian Anderson, as well as the production company that's called Challenges and Creations Incorporated. But they don't exist anymore, obviously. And I think this is the only thing they really produced. But it was made in Ancaster, Ontario, Canada. If you don't know, I'm Canadian. I'm from Saskatchewan, Canada. And so, yeah, the weird thing is we don't really know how this game came into our hands. Whenever I ask my parents, we can't remember when or how we actually got a hold of it. It almost just appeared in our house one day, which sort of adds to the mysteriousness of the game. But I believe my mom picked it up in a secondhand shop, like a pawn shop, but this was like 10 plus years ago. And it's a really, really interesting game. It's got some weird things about it. If you look at some of the reviews and if you look at comments that people have made on the game, you'll see that they don't have the kindest things to say about it. It's not exactly the most well-made game. But that be damned, it's still one of my favorite games to play. It's still one of our family's favorite games to play, and it's a game that I actually enjoy introducing to the larger groups of friends because it allows for up to 1 to 6 players, but actually it works better when you allow up to 1 to 6 teams, specifically of 2. 2 is, I think, the best. You can potentially have up to 12 people playing the game. Because one of the fun things about this as well is, like, you can see, when it talks about how many players can actually play the game, and we'll see if we can get it to focus here. You can see that it works for 1 to many players, up to 6 teams, but it's for ages 12 to 101. So, for any Centurions out there, this game could be for you. So there's some really, really weird quirks like that in this game, which sort of adds to sort of the quirkiness of it. It's really, really fun. So let's just get into sort of how the game is played, and let's talk a little bit about it. Because there's no other game out there that I've played that's like this. It has some interesting ideas, and I think it definitely is something that I hope that more board games try out, is just new ideas. Even if it doesn't work out, I think it can produce some interesting things. But let's show the board off here. So here's the actual game board, and you can see it's actually a really gorgeous game board. I actually do really like how it's painted. Obviously, because this is likely a secondhand copy, and it's been it's such an old game. It is scratched up here and there. It's not the most it's not in the best state, but it's been through a lot. So how does the game work? So the game is, I wouldn't call it a trivia game. It is more of a riddle game. So it has questions and puzzles and stuff that you have to answer, but it's not like, pop culture questions or trivia like that. It's not like about facts or things like that. The way the game works is you or your team is going to end up choosing an animal. So let's just grab some random animals here. Let's grab this one, for example. I don't know if this will focus, but here's a little scorpion. Let's try to get to focus on that. So there's a little scorpion for you. And this is part of the fire element. So there's 4 different elements in the game. You have your earth, you have your water at the top here, air, and fire. Once you and your team have actually chosen an animal, you'll go to your respective side. So obviously, since we chose the scorpion here, let me just move so you can see the air side a little bit more. You would start in your respective side. Now, the interesting thing about this game, and I think it's one of the things that I really love about it, is that you don't take turns in this game. It's a race, and it's a very very cool thing that, like, obviously taking turns in board games is sort of the main thing about board games. Everyone has their own turn. In this game, everyone is playing at the same time. It is an actual race. So where are you racing? Well, the idea is all of these different spaces represent represent one of the four different elements in the game. And if you land on one, you have to complete a puzzle or a riddle or a question or whatever, depending on the color that you chose. And there's these four different decks. This elastic literally just fell apart due to old age. So there's fire, there's earth, there's air, and there's water. Now, depending on which color you land on, you have to answer a question from the top of the deck. Now, each different deck has a theme to it. So, for example, Earth cards usually deal with patterns or math, things like that. So this question here, for example, is who has the most amount in the piggy bank? So these are almost like questions that you would get in like high school or university. There, now, don't let that scare you. Some of them are very difficult. Some of them are quite easy. But when you're playing, this is why I recommend playing with teams, is because it is quite fun trying to figure out as a team sort of the best way to approach these things. But regardless, Earth has a bunch of different ways. This one is about how can measure exactly 5 liters of water with 2 different containers filled with water. We hate answering Earth questions. But then you have other things like air, and air would be more like word questions or more like lists, for example. So if we pull a top card off here, this question is a little bit different in the sense that it says list 10 things that are frightening. For example, a job interview, and it'll actually let you know if you can use that example or not. So each different element has its own types of questions. So you can almost sort of like plan out ahead, and like if you're someone who's bad at math, for example, like I am, you can go and potentially try and avoid those questions if you can, and sort of play to your strengths, which is a very, very interesting thing. Now, with the way that the game is played, some of them have very clear answers, right? Some of them have answers that, aren't up for interpretation. The air questions, for example, where it says list 10 things that are frightening, well, I mean, that could be a ton of different things, right? So how do you determine if you're actually correct? Well, you actually utilize the other players in the game. So while everyone's playing at the same time, and this is another reason why it works best with teams, is once you're done your question, like done your list, you actually ask another team, hey, can you check my answers for me? And this is why it's good for teams, is one person can keep working on their question while the other person can help another team, finalize their answer. So for this air question, you would have just passed over your sheet of paper that you wrote them down on, asked them to quickly check on it, and they'll be like, okay, you're good. But sometimes they might be like, I don't really agree with this one. So it almost adds a little subjectiveness to it. But it also gives you a chance to have some fun arguments as to, why something should be on that list or not. And then for the other questions, like obviously like the math questions and things like that, there is actually an answer book that contains, answers for the things that don't have, any subjectivity to it. There's only one answer that it can be. Now, the funny thing is, again, this is sort of going to how the game is not very well made, is you can sort of see here, my family and I have all, over the course of time and over the course of the time that we've played this game, we've slowly been correcting the rule book, because there are some questions that we've come across where their own answer in the answer book has actually been incorrect. And as a family, we've figured out, like, it has to be this answer as opposed to the one they have in the book. So over time, we've actually corrected the rule book for them, or the answer book for them, which is funny. But again, it's an interesting thing. Like, it's sort of one of the things that we hold close to our heart, because it's something that we've worked together on almost in a fun way. But once you've answered your question correctly, you can move on to the next space. And you actually just roll a dice, and that counts how many spaces you can move. There are certain movement rules. For example, you can't go back and forth in the same space. You do have to sort of go around. But essentially, you try and get to each of these 4 different corners. Now, once you get to a corner, so let's say we go up to Earth here, you actually enter this triangle. And You go all the way around, and as you exit, you have to answer a question from that element. Once you pass this little eye symbol, which you might not be able to see very well on the camera, but I'm just pointing to it here. And then once you've answered that question specifically, you'll actually get one of these little triangle icons that represent the 4 different elements. And the whole goal is to go to these 4 different corners, answering the appropriate element question, and then getting to the center, and that's how you win. And that's why I say it's an actual race. And so it definitely creates a lot of these tense moments, and it creates for some fun things. There are a couple different things, like you just essentially have to land in this inner circle and then answer any one question from that appropriate element, depending on which thing you landed on. If you're lucky enough, though, to roll and land directly on one of these eyes, you instantly win the game. So that adds a little bit of extra excitement if you're able to roll really well. So that is the idea of the game. It's a very, very simple game, but some of the questions are stupid. Some of the questions are vastly easier than others. But it's a very, very fun, exciting game that I think is nice because you don't have any downtime. Like, everyone is playing at the same time. It's nice to just be able to puzzle your way through different things. And some of the questions are really, really fun to work through. Like, some of them are pattern questions, for example, which are my favorite. Some of them are math questions. Some of them are word questions. Some of them are like scramble word questions. So I think there's a decent variety of questions that I think cater to a wide variety of ways people think. So if you are someone who, if you have a fairly balanced team, one of your teammates, one of your team members is good at math, and maybe you're good at word puzzles, it gives you a lot of flexibility on the board. So you can sort of craft different strategies in that sense. But yeah, that's the game. And it's a really, really weird game. I don't know where we got it from. I don't know when we got it. My family doesn't know. It just appeared in our house one day. But it's something that we hold close to our heart, and I think there's no other board game I've played that's like it. Obviously, you can have crossovers with other games that have word scramble problems or math problems or trivia problems or whatever. But I've actually never played a game similar to this in the sense that you are actually racing and doing all your turns at the same time. I think that's a mechanic I think that'd be interesting to play more on. And I if anyone has any games, after seeing this video, if you have any games in mind that actually do fit the bill, that's similar to Cha-len-gah here, or Cha-len-gah, if you want to call it that, then that'd be good. One thing as well that I didn't really talk about is there are these chance cards also. So these are represented by the double bordered triangles, like the yellow bordered triangles here. And these ones, if you land on them, you actually get to draw chance cards. And these can be potentially helpful or negative. So for example, some of them are like forfeit one challenge. So it allows you to essentially skip a challenge and not have to deal with it, because the idea of the game is you can't actually keep moving until you finish the question you're currently on. Now, obviously we've house ruled this a bit because some of the questions people have gotten stuck on for 15-20 minutes. So when it gets that bad of a point, we have a house rule where it's like, okay, yeah, it's a pity go. So just keep going, discard that one, and don't worry about it. But you do have other challenges or challenge cards where are negative, where it's double one challenge, where you have to complete 2 of the same element before you actually can continue on. And the tough thing about these, this elastic broke too. The tough thing about these chance cards is that you have to make sure to get rid of all your chance cards before you enter your inner circle. So it's a little bit of a gamble. You might be able to get a card that's really, really good for you, but it might make your life extra hard before you're even able to get to the finale there. So yeah, it's one thing to keep note of. But yeah, that's the game. That's Cha-len-gah. There's not much to it, and the stuff that's incorrect about it, Brian Anderson, I don't believe, has developed or made any other game. The publication company, which is called, again, the publication company is Challenges and Creations Incorporated, copyrighted in 1995. I couldn't find any more information on anything they've produced. I think this is the only game that they've ever made, and this is one of the few copies in existence. I think on BGG, I believe there's maybe 12 or so people that actually have it in their collection, and they're all Canadians. So that's one of the reasons why I think that it was only produced in Canada, and you can only get it in Canada. I don't know where you'd be able to get your hands on it. Last time I checked on eBay, there wasn't anyone selling a copy of it. So if you ever get your hands on it, I do recommend just picking it up, because I'm sure that you could get it at a very, very low price and it's a very, very interesting game that I think, for especially those who like to add unique things to their collection, I think this would have a place in there because there's nothing else like it that I've played, and it's a game that's very, very close to mine and my family's heart. And yeah, so if there's any of those types of games out there like that, let me know in the comments below. Let me know if there's any games that you and your family play, or maybe just you play, that you've had for a long time, that it's very obscure, but just something special to you, and something that might not be the most well made or has the best mechanics, but is still fun regardless, because that's what this game is to us. And we have a blast playing this game, and it's a game that I do enjoy even playing with friends every once in a while as well. That's going to do it for this video. Just a not super long video. I just wanted to talk a little bit about this game because it's a game that I wanted to make a video on ever since I started making more videos and stuff like that. So hopefully you all enjoyed it, and don't worry, there's definitely some more solo board game content in the future. And of course, we'll be definitely checking out some Aeon Trespass Odyssey as time goes on. So I'll give updates on how my friends and I campaign is going, as well as we'll eventually start our solo campaign playthrough as soon as I get some more player aids sorted out and sort of figure out the best way to do it, because I definitely don't want to make it a super long thing. I know a lot of playthrough videos out there are quite long. I definitely want to try to make something a little bit more condensed and a little bit quicker for people to watch. So be on the lookout for that. And thanks again to everyone who's checked out the videos. It definitely means a lot, to see so many people come out and actually keep in touch. Even though I took a very, very long break from making videos, it definitely means a lot. So thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take care.